Hello and welcome to another studio session set 2. I'm Michelle Adamas, and today we are going to be working with mediums for raised stenciling. We're going to test a few. I'm going to show you my favorite, and then we're going to create a background, a mixed media project with that using color sprays. Let's get started. I am first creating my sample boards, and I'm working on little 8x10 canvases, and I'm trying joint compound first. I am looking for a very specific reaction to the paints that I'll be using. My next one is Venetian plaster. This one is a mix of water and the plaster, and I like to start with this little mini frother before getting out a silicone spatula and mixing it. So I want it to be about the consistency of an icing, and not too thick, not too watery. And then I'm just going to use a plastic card. I'm going to prepare all of my stenciling first, and so that's why I am taking you through this. Again, I'm looking for a very specific reaction to my paints. I'm just wiping the mediums away from my tape so I don't pull up all of my beautiful stenciling when I do. This next one is salt wash, and typically it's mixed with paint, but for the purposes of this project, I'm just mixing it with some water, and I'm going to stencil that on to my last canvas. Once all of the canvases are dry, we're going to get to the fun part. I am going to only take you through this process with this first canvas before we go on to making the project with my favorite medium. So I am masking off the area that I want to spray. I'm using, the only commercial spray I'm using is some Distress ink by Tim Holtz in a spray, or distress sprays, and all of the other sprays I'm using were made myself from things like my inks and my watercolors. I share how to do this in my Artisan Circle membership, and I'll link to that in the description so you can check it out and join us if you'd like. So I'm doing each one with a different spray type. So ink sprays, acrylic sprays, watercolor sprays, all of that. And I'm looking for a very specific reaction. I'm not quite getting what I want from the joint compound, and I think it is because of perhaps the binder in it, and also that it probably has a little silicone or something, and so it's got a really gray appearance to start with, and while the color will sit on top, it's not doing exactly what I want. So I have done this for each of the backgrounds, and I'll show you my favorite, but the first thing I want to do is label each with the type of spray that I used, and this just gives me a really good reference. And also when I make my other sample boards, like this one on plaster, and then here is the one with the salt wash, and you can see that I don't know, can you choose my favorite? Because I'll tell you right now, it's definitely the Venetian plaster, and second would be the salt wash. But I've decided to create my piece, my final piece, with the Venetian plaster, and I'm actually going to use 3 different stencils on this, and so I'm going to show you how I do this. One thing to note with the Venetian plaster is that you will probably need to apply a little bit more of it than you would with a thicker medium, but it works out just fine. So I want to make sure that each section that I do is completely dry. And so I am laying tape, artist tape and masking tape, on top of the stencil that is dry. And I'm doing this so that I can line up my next stencil as closely as possible. So I'm gonna do this one, and then I'll do another one on the other side, and I'm gonna let everything dry completely. Here I'm just cleaning up the tape. That's super important to try to do, because if not, then when you lift up your tape, you're likely going to pull that plaster and you're not going to be happy. So If you do, there are things that you can do to work around it, and I'll show you one of those when we're making the background. And so I'm going to just do this final stencil, again making sure that both of these are dry before I tape them off and put that final stencil in place. I'm really loving how this is turning out. I do have a couple of little gaps, and I'm going to show you how I attempt to address that. So here we are, and you can barely see the stencil, and that's because it is completely really white when it's dry, and that's really what I'm looking for because I don't want anything to compete with the paint sprays. I'm taking a small artist brush, and it's a little tedious, but it worked out really well. I can still see definition between the stencils, so it's not exactly a blend, but I didn't want big gaps. Next, I'm going to take a little sanding block and I'm going to sand over the rough areas of the stencil. And then I'm going to take this and put it over my garbage can and use a chip brush to get out all of the dust. Here we go. This is where the magic happens. So I got out my favorite colors of my paint sprays. I chose to use the distress spray, my ink sprays, and my watercolor sprays. And I am just going to keep going. I love how each color will blend, so that blue and yellow is going to make the green. And it may look a little splotchy now, but I'm going to show you how we blend all of this together. So I'm just going to show you that you'll see me blotting off and adding more, and I really love the result at the end. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you will be inspired to try your own color sprays and texture techniques. I look forward to seeing you next week at studio sessions at 2. Please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and share. I will see you next Tuesday. Happy creating.